To talk about that and more, we're delighted to welcome the Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, back on the program. Minister, good to see you. Border opens November 8th, so we've got a date. That's great. But double vaccinated travelers still require this expensive negative COVID-19 PCR test. How long will that stay in effect for? And maybe as importantly, why is it necessary?
Well, I'll tell you, Evan, that we implemented that requirement for a negative PCR test based on the advice we received from the Public Health Agency of Canada, and it has proven its effectiveness for the past several months in ensuring that people who were returning to Canada, not just from the United States, but from anywhere in the world, had to provide that negative test, and it has helped us, protect Canadians and protect Canadian communities from the spread of COVID. And so the advice that we received from the Public Health Agency of Canada on Friday, they reiterated that advice, and so we'll retain that. Right. As long as it is necessary, but we're also learning and that the effectiveness of being of the double vaccinated traveler, that's also demonstrating for us a very significant reduction in the risk that right. is presented at our borders. We'll continue to, that we've seen throughout the pandemic. That advice has evolved as new evidence and new data is available. We'll continue to follow the advice from the Public Health Agency of Canada. Frankly, we're going to continue to do everything that is necessary to protect Canadians. It's been very effective for us so far. And we're not going to change that until the advice and the evidence supports it.
But there is evidence that supports it, because even according to Public Health on that Friday press conference, the data is pretty clear. The number of people who can spread COVID who are double vaxxed. Of course, months ago it was a different story because the level of double vax was totally different. But now someone who's double vaxxed, the idea that they can come across and spread COVID, I think the data is less than 0.5%. Like it's almost nothing. So the data would support not needing a negative PCR test. Actually, the data would support you just need the double vax. Is it there essentially to discourage cross-border shopping coming up to the big shopping season on American Thanksgiving? Essentially, is this a non-tariff barrier to basically discourage travelers because it's too darn expensive to cross the border?
No, to be very clear, Evan, we're not trying to discourage those people who wish to cross the border. We just want to make sure that they can do it safely. That's what the negative PCR test has been put in place for. I will agree with you that the data is showing us, and it's actually less than 0.2% of people crossing that border into Canada are proving to be infected with COVID. And so the numbers, it's been a very effective measure that's been put in place. But one of the things that we have done for Canadians, for example, who wish to go to the United States to engage in a shopping trip, a day trip, for example, are going to be able to do so, and they're going to be able to get their PCR test in Canada, and it'll remain valid for up to 72 hours, so they can use exactly the same test to return to Canada.
You and I know,
but those measures have been put in place to protect Canadians, and we're going to retain them as long as the advice from the Public Health Agency to us is that it is necessary to continue to provide the protection that we have promised Canadians we would have in place.
Many Canadians, Minister, are confused about what they see as mixed messages the government's sending. For example, there's still a travel advisory for non-essential travel outside Canada. It remains in effect until further notice. But then you and I were talking about the border reopening. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was asked about this the other day when she was in the U.S. Let me just show you what she had to say.
Just try to do the things you need to do and maybe hold back on doing the things that you just want to do. And I think if we can keep on doing that for a few more weeks, Canada can really fully put COVID behind us.
So what does that mean? Like, do what you need to do, not what you want to do. So is cross-border shopping encouraged or not? Is international travel for a vacation encouraged or not?
Well, Evan, I think it's really important to recognize that we are not out of this pandemic, and we have to finish the fight. And I think the advice that Chrystia is providing is prudent and the right advice for people who may be choosing to travel. We know that, for example, the vaccination rates in the United States are in many regions of their country significantly lower than that which is in Canada. We also know that other destinations of international travel can present very significant risks, and that the rules of travel to those countries can change very, very quickly. And so we're continuing to provide what we think is very prudent advice to the vast majority of Canadians that they should avoid non-essential discretionary travel. But we also recognize that and are putting in place the processes and systems to facilitate that travel which Canadians want to do. But at the same time, I think the advice that they're receiving is the right advice.
But you got to
That
walk
if they are able to avoid travel at this time, it's still probably a prudent choice.
But in politics, you got to walk the walk, sir. Like the Prime Minister took a family vacation in Tofino. Then now we've got Chrystia Freeland saying only go to do things that you need to do, not want to do. You know, Canadians are saying don't do non-essential reasons. His family's on a family vacation. So is that hypocrisy? Is that a mixed message? Doesn't the Prime Minister and the government got to walk the walk if you want Canadians to do the same?
Well, first of all, Evan, you know we're putting in requirements for domestic travel, for air and rail, that people be fully vaccinated. And of course, the Prime Minister is in fact fully vaccinated. And so we believe that travel can take place safely. But at the same time, when we are discouraging unnecessary, particularly international travel, we recognize that there are some parts of the world and certain countries that are not necessarily safe to travel to.
It's hard to read here. And then with the borders open, a lot of folks are trying to figure out about alignments. Like we don't have vaccine passports for international travel yet. You and I have spoken about this. Can you give us any indication as when they will be ready and maybe why that's taken so long?
Yeah, that's a priority for our government. We have been working on it for months. Most of the technical issues have been addressed, and we're working very closely with our provincial partners. I will tell you, in our conversations with the provinces, all of them understand the importance of an internationally accepted proof of vaccination certificate. And so I'm very confident that work will bear fruit, and that we will have such a vaccine passport, if you will, for international travel available Canadians in the coming weeks. But there's still a little bit of work to be completed, and we are making sure that that's done, and that it will work well for those Canadians who continue to make the choice to travel.
Who will do the screening to verify passengers' vaccination status, the double vax at airports? Is it going to be the airlines? Is it going to be the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority? Whose responsibility, and how's it going to work?
Yeah, it's really important. First of all, we try to push out a lot of those verification processes away from our border to make things more efficient when people finally arrive. And so we will be asking the airlines to examine those documents to make sure that the people have that proof of vaccination before they board the plane to come to Canada. And so those processes will be in place, but that again will be verified upon arrival, and our border service officers and our public health officials are very well versed and I think have done frankly an extraordinary job utilizing the tools that are available to date to verify that the people are fully vaxxed, using the ArriveCAN app, for example, and the implementation of a new proof of vaccination certificate, which is coming, as I've said, will make those processes even more efficient.
Okay, got to leave it there. Minister Blair, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Evan.